Okay, in this tutorial, we're going to look at how to explain the formation of a U-shaped valley using some diagrams. So what you're going to need to complete this task is one sheet of A4 paper. We're going to be drawing 3 diagrams. The start of the Ice Age or before the Ice Age, the during the Ice Age diagram, and the after the Ice Age diagram. Now that I'm assuming you have a piece of paper, I'd like to make sure you have written this title at the top of your piece of paper. And we're going to start by having a look at our first diagram. Okay, so if I just remove this here, what we can see in this first diagram is a V-shaped valley, and we have a before the Ice Age. So the first thing you're going to want to make sure you've got in your diagram is this subtitle. Then you're going to want to draw this diagram, which shows you a little river in a valley, and the sides of the valley are coming down to meet the river, and they are called interlocking spurs. So we have a little annotation here to show the valley has sides coming down to the river. Now that's kind of important because we're going to see what happens to those sides by the end of the Ice Age. If you take a quick little look to the other side where we've got a photograph, we can see our river just like we have in the diagram, and we can see our hillsides known as interlocking spurs. They're coming down, meeting the river, and interlocking on either side, causing the river to kind of bend around it. And overall, we can see the key thing in this diagram, which is our V-shaped valley. Okay, so that's what we have before the Ice Age, and that's quite important because our glacier is going to flow into this valley and change it quite dramatically. Okay, in a number of ways. We'll explore what happens. So make sure you've got this diagram. There's one little top tip that you can use in an exam, not for your class notes, but in an exam. What you might choose to do is just simply draw a little V and then add your interlocking spurs diagram annotation to the side, your river note here with the word river, and then the little thing saying a V-shaped valley, along with the heading that you can see at the top over here. And that you could do that much quicker. And as with all diagram drawing, the quality of your diagram is not where you get the marks, it's for the annotations. Okay, so that's step 1, pre-Ice Age, before the Ice Age. So let's have a look what happens next. Well, you don't need to draw this, obviously, this is a photograph. But during the Ice Age, a glacier has flowed into our valley, and it's traveling in this direction. And it's come from a number of corries. There's a glacial corrie up here with a glacier that's flowing down, and there's another one up here, and it's flowing down. This is all happening because of gravity, and there's actually a third one coming in. So there's lots of smaller glaciers all joined into this massive valley glacier. We can even see a corrie in the background up here with a glacier flowing and joining this. So this glacier, this large valley glacier, is actually created from lots of what we call tributary glaciers, which are smaller glaciers that flow into it. We'll come back to these tributary glaciers because they leave behind an additional feature at the end of the Ice Age. But we've got lots of glaciers all feeding this, and this glacier has flowed into our V-shaped valley, and that leads us to the next step. What does it do with our valley? Well, here we've got a little cross-section diagram where we've taken a slice through our valley, to show you what's going on. So, whilst you draw, this is the main diagram, and actually in an exam you might choose to do this alone, and this would get you all the marks you need at National 5, to be honest. You wouldn't probably need to write anything else other than this. But let's just have a little look at it. So as you draw it, I'm just going to talk you through the diagram. So we've got a mark for telling about the glacier made from compressed snow. We've got a mark for telling us about the word gravity. And we've got a mark because it's a V-shaped valley, okay, made by a river. We're explaining that our glacier has flowed into our valley. It's touching all of the sides, all 3 sides of the valley, and it's doing these 2 things, plucking and abrasion. Now, we've come across these words both in our corrie and our arête and pyramidal peak already. Now, there are always additional marks in geography when you actually tell the examiner what your processes are. So you will see over here, I've explained what abrasion actually is, what's happening when rock rubs against the side and wears it away like sandpaper. And if you watched the video at the beginning of this lesson in the assignment, you'll have seen a demonstration of what the power of rocks when they're embedded inside a glacier. This little paragraph here tells a little bit of a story about plucking and what it is. And the final label up here is a little bit about telling what else feeds the glacier. It's not just plucking that rips up rock, but rock actually is rolling down from the mountains around the glacier and dropping onto the sides. And then those rocks are gradually feeding into the glacier. If we just scroll back up very quickly, you can see on the edges of the glacier here, loads of rocks piled up on the edge. This is kind of like a scree slope. And these rocks have broken off because of freeze thaw, and they've just rolled down the side of the mountain and built up on the side of the glacier. And then they are going to slide into the glacier and feed it, which will increase the rate of abrasion. Okay, so that is diagram number 2. Make sure you've got all of your labels drawn before moving on to our final diagram. So, when the Ice Age ended 12,000 years or so ago, what happened? Well, let's have a little look. Now, this is a complex diagram. You can simplify it if you want, and I'll show you how to do that at the end. But we've got a kind of a 3D diagram, and we're showing what's left behind. So we've got our big main U-shaped valley. We can see that. But in our U-shaped valley, we may have a lake, a ribbon lake. A ribbon lake is a long and narrow lake that fills a U-shaped valley. We may have a little hanging valley. Now, you might remember earlier on in the tutorial, I told you about these little tributary glaciers, the smaller glaciers that flowed into the side. Let me just show you the photograph. Here is a smaller glacier flowing to the side. Now, this glacier is going to be far less powerful. There'll be a lot less abrasion and plucking happening in this U-shaped valley because the glacier is smaller. And because of that, the valley never goes quite as deep. So it's a really U-shaped valley, but it doesn't go all of the way down to the bottom. And it's at the side because it flowed into the main one. So it's called a hanging valley because it hangs high above the valley. And there's often a little river falling out of it, forming a beautiful waterfall. These are some of the most attractive waterfalls you find around the world. Yosemite National Park has got lots of very famous ones. Now, the sides of the valley have now been chopped off. You may remember from the beginning of the tutorial, if I just scroll back up, we had these things called interlocking spurs. Here they are here. These were the valley sides that came right down to the river flowing in the valley. Now, the glacier has sliced them off, creating these steep vertical sides called truncated spurs. We have a little river flowing through our U-shaped valley. Now, because this river did not create the U-shaped valley, rivers create V-shaped valleys. Therefore, this river or this stream does not belong, which is why we call it a misfit stream. And finally, here we've got a description of what's happened to our valley. That's kind of important because our valley is now much deeper. Okay, it's also got a flat bottom as well now, which it didn't have before. And just to show you what that actually looks like, here is a typical U-shaped valley after the Ice Age. So here are our steep vertical sides, here's our flat bottom floor, and here's the other side, giving it a U shape. Over here we can see a hanging valley. There's also a hanging valley up here. So these are smaller tributary glaciers. And we can see in our valley floor a ribbon lake filling up the valley itself. Okay. And there is your 3 diagrams. What you want to do now is make sure you've got them all on one page, that you've added all of the annotations that go with these diagrams, and that you photographed it and put it into your main class